must sign in and sign out. Come in late, you just have to sign in. If you leave, you have to sign out. Everyone have a great day.
Everyone have a great day. What a nice way to start any conversation. All right, my friends. We clear on what the ASVAB is?
Yeah.
Anybody gonna take it? ASVAB is an aptitude test, mostly used for joining the military. Although, hey, chatterbox, my turn. ASVAB is an aptitude test used mostly for joining the military. What type of job you qualify for? Brainiacs, military intelligence, less intelligent folks like myself, the infantry, and everything in the middle. Okay. So scoring well opens up all the jobs to you. If you score less well, you may have a limitation. There's just some jobs, like the nerd jobs. I should say that. The brainiac jobs. I've lived all the jobs in the military. I know it takes all types of things. That's what the ASVAB is. However, you can also take it just to get a gauge on where you're doing in terms of ACT, SAT. Other job industries may use it as well. I said primarily for the military, but other industries may use it as well. So that is something that that you might be interested in. Is anyone signed up for that?
How do you do that?
Counselor's office, guidance office.
Oh, I don't talk to the counselor.
I'm handing you at random. I'm handing you at random a variety.
Can I take this one out?
No. Hey, we have a fun one today. For real, we got a fun one today. We're gonna be active. We're not gonna stay in our seats only. We're gonna do a lot of different things. All right, what you have in your hands, this is kind of a two-phase class, 2 parts. What you have in your hand is part 1. I have obviously just given this to you at random. And if you're completely perplexed or questioning why you have it in your hands, good. I'll get there in a second. I do have one more thing to put in your hands that I forgot about, my bad. And I'm going to get Delaney to help me out. Delaney, will you give one to everybody? I'll help you. There we go. There we go. Fabian will be my helper. So this is, now first things first, keep your Explorer notes, your baseball cards. I'll take them up on Friday. Okay, Friday is my collection day. It's how I work. It's my system. I'll take up your baseball cards on Friday. That means anyone that maybe didn't follow along or do it as we went, you still got some time to turn them in. Those of you that really like to, oh gosh, I'm sorry. What was you want?
Can I please have something up in the middle?
Yeah, I'm not gonna. No, I'm specifically trying to give out certain ones. I do have some extras, and for those of you that will want to buy into doing a second one, like those of you that really love color and want to do a second one, that's fine. You don't even know what they're for yet. Let me get there. You don't even know what they're for yet. Baseball cards, Explorer baseball cards. I'll take them up on Friday. What you have in front of you as a color page, hang on to it, I'll explain it. And then what you're getting from Fabian is 2-sided notes. I will also take these up on Friday, but you really should accomplish these today, okay? First side, Columbian exchange. This is the first half of our class. The second page, triangular trade. This is the second half of our class. So you got to be tucked in, paying attention, because we're going to go do some, we're going to get all these done today. And if you just sit there and don't participate in your notes, you're going to have to, you have to double back and get it done, because this is today's class being accomplished all at the same time. So are you ready to go?
No.
Shall we? No. Shall we begin? Okay. You have a color page in front of you, part 1 of 2. I'll get you part 2 in a second. Oh, yes, we're talking God, gold, and glory. Again, I'm actually going to play this song in its entirety while you do your coloring. So we will get to John Smith and his God, gold, and glory, and the Virginia Company, because that's a big part of our conversation today. As a reminder, What were some big motivations for exploration and discovery?
God.
You know what? I kind of just spilled it there with John Smith's song that I mentioned. So what was it, Delaney? God, gold, and glory, definitely the big ones. God, gold, and glory. I've showed you this screen before. Trying to drill that GGG into your brain, because if you take nothing else out of the age of discovery, remember God, gold, and glory, you're going to be able to filter your way to a whole lot of answers. I'm not saying memorizing that is the only answer, but if you can remember those motivations, you're going to be able to get to a lot of answers, not just on a test, but in understanding the time period. Last year, I used the 2 R's as well, religion and riches. Right? That's Swanson's version of God, gold, and glory, religion and riches. Whatever works for you. Right? I'm always trying to bring you a visual that'll kind of tuck it into your brain a little bit stronger. So religion, riches, God, gold, and glory. These are our big motivators. Since it's something we struggled with a little bit yesterday, and I know Monday, coming off of a weekend, slept since then. We didn't really have didn't give me a warm fuzzy that we understood the line of demarcation. So I want to make sure I teach that well again. Remember, who came up with this line? The Pope. Why does it matter that the Pope is chiming in on world trade routes? Huh? So he's religious. Is he a king?
No.
Homer, go ahead.
Making decisions for 2 different countries.
Yeah, and even I know it deals with Spain and Portugal directly. Homer says 2 different countries, but really he's applying his influence to the world at large. 2 different countries, Spain and Portugal, sure, but the Pope is impacting North and South America. He's impacting the Indies, which is slightly off this map. The Pope clearly thinks he matters in the world, and guess what? The world gives him that authority. The world gives the Catholic Pope the ability to make this line. So the line of demarcation, originally right here, the yellow dashed line, and then just 1 year later, they come up with another treaty that moves it slightly to the west. And this is these 2 lines are more or less similar: the demarcation line and then the treaty line. Spain to the west gets to explore west. Portugal to the east. Notable that Portugal has this sliver of what modern day country? Brazil. And what do they speak in Brazil? Portuguese. So 500 years ago, the foundation was laid for Brazilians to speak the language Portuguese. When you know history, you kind of start to understand the modern day world as well. So this is the line of demarcation. This is why Spaniards found the Americas, and the Portuguese had to go around the tip of Africa to find India, to find that water route to India. It really impacted the entire strategy of where do I get to explore. And then also, we find that people who were born in one country, did they 100% always sail for that country? No. Tell me more.
Our guy.
Your guy, what about him? What was he born as? Who was your guy? I don't remember.
Erickson.
He's not one I'm talking about.
Everybody.
Tell me someone that was born Portuguese but sailed Spanish.
Whatever his long.
We'll grab Christopher Columbus. He's a big one, right? He was born what? Italian. Okay, so TJ, you kind of asked me, why doesn't Italy get in the game? I told you because they're a little bit, Mediterranean sea locked. They're not on the Atlantic Ocean. But that didn't stop their people, some of their brightest minds, from wanting to explore. So an Italian like Christopher Columbus has to sell himself to the Spanish, or has to sell his mission to the Spanish to get financed. And all of a sudden he sails under the Spanish flag. Lily's trying to say something. John Cabot was born what? Same. Italian. Sails for? England. And is responsible for you speaking English in the world today. He lands in Canada, but his impact essentially becomes the 13 American colonies, leads to an American Revolution, leads to the country you're sitting into today. I mean, I skipped a couple things in the middle there, but John Cabot's exploration essentially leads to you being an English-speaking person in the state of Georgia today. Crazy, huh? So another big picture of the line of demarcation. And again, I'm doing this a bit as a review term. If I say something 3, 4, 5 times, probably can decide that it's kind of important. And then also it's going to set up our conversation for today as well. It's important for us to understand that before we get going. Here's the big map of all the European routes of discovery. Now, we went one at a time. I tried to show a map of each specific explorer. And then things like Leif Erikson is not reflected on this big map. Certainly Lewis and Clark isn't, because I already gave you the disclaimer that they kind of don't fit into the age of discovery, but it's real important for us to talk about them. But if you were struggling on who sailed where, or you need to see another map, this is on Google Classroom right now. Of course, I'm showing it to you again just by way of, just as a way to show you how wide the exploration was. I mean, when you look at this and you look at all the different colors, even if you don't really, you can take yourself to the key to see who is what, right? And when I show you a map, especially when a test shows you a map, the answer is usually right in front of you. When you see a map question on a test, you should be like, haha, I got the right answer. I just got to understand what the picture is showing. A lot of times you really, let's just say you don't even have a beginning understanding of the question. Now, I hope you will. But let's say you don't even have a beginning understanding of what the question is actually asking. When a map is being shown, usually you just got to take the information on the map and then apply it to the multiple choice questions, and the answer is right in front of you. So that's a little sidebar. You can look at the key to see what color associates with what country, etc. But the big take here, I hope, is you see all these lines, you would think, wow, this age of discovery was pretty busy. There's not many corners of the world's oceans that aren't touched. Not many places that didn't go explored. So it's not just one small little region between Europe and the Americas. We have people sailing all over the world during this age of discovery. Good morning, Ms. Williams. So this was just a review map. We've already peeled back the explorations of 8 different individuals. And like I said, it's on Google Classroom if you need to catch up on your Explorer notes or anything like that. All right, I'm going to bring you a couple of vocab words along the way to triangular trade and the Columbian exchange. And like I said, we have a 2-part activity today as well, so I'm going to try to manage our time as well. The astrolabe is a very important piece of technology that enabled the age of discovery. Now, you think technology is something like the World Wide Web, or this box that you have in the back of your pocket, or the ability to video game with someone in Scandinavia, right? I mean, that's technology to us. This seems like a pretty small technology today when we have GPS and internet tracking, and like you can pull up an app and see where every airplane in the sky is. You guys know you can do that? There are apps that track every airplane in the sky, every ship in the ocean. That's your technology. But it starts with this. It starts with the invention of this thing called the astrolabe. And it uses lines of latitude and the stars so that explorers can determine exactly where they are. Now, I'm not going to teach you how to use the astrolabe, right? We don't have to test out on your ability to use the astrolabe. I just want you to understand it's a piece of technology that enabled the age of exploration. Let's take the word astrolabe. What's the first part of that word? Astro. What does that typically mean? Stars. Okay, so if you were to take a guess, without me telling you anything else, how do you think this little device worked? Use the stars to guide you. That is a really good, simple way to say it. If you have more sciencey questions than that, I'm going to punch you down to whose class? McGuire's class. That's right. I'll teach you the history of it. He teach you the science of it. Real simply put, and I'm the simplest mind in here, right? One part of the device would line up with the horizon, the long horizon of ocean in front of you. And then another part of the device, a little bit movable, okay, this hand here that's movable, would point to a known star, usually something like the North Star, a constant in the sky. And then based on, how far these tick marks are apart, an explorer could understand where he was.
I thought people did it like this.
Well, that would maybe even a more rugged example of how to do that because you're using your own hand. And this is a device that comes out of that same concept. Good thought, Delaney. Good thought. This allows explorers to go to the captain's log and say, September 21st, 1483, we are located at. And they could finally, with a sense of, with some sense of accuracy, plot exactly where they were, day to day, moment to moment. Obviously, they can't email their report to their higher headquarters. We don't have that going on just yet. But when they return, they can reasonably say, this is the route I took. This is where that chunk of land is. Let's call it Bimini. Let's call it Hispaniola. Thank you, ma'am. And that is how they are able to expand their accuracy in their map making and their exploration. Astrolabe, pretty significant. Pretty significant. Another one that you are probably more familiar with is the compass. Who's got a compass in their life right now? On your phone. there it is. That's kind of what I was looking for. Every last one of you has a compass on your phone. Now, who has a physical compass with a magnetic needle? Something like that. At home. Yeah, at home. I have one, and I was scrambling to find it this morning. I think it's in this room somewhere, but I've got several military compasses. I'll try to bring one in by the end of the week to show you what a compass really looks like. I'll pull one up on my phone right here. So there's a variety of apps, but I think the default Apple app looks like this. It's black. It says compass, and it it works. You got to hold the phone flat. I'm holding it up right now, but it will genuinely tell you which direction you are pointing pretty accurately. I mean, I would argue even more accurately than these rustic, magnetic needle ones, because there's a whole lot of GPS involved as well. It tells me I'm in Alma, Georgia. I'm at 200 feet of elevation. That's a lot of technology in my hand. This technology starts with this box-looking compass that people used in early navigation. Now, do you know how a compass works?
Yes.
Okay, what does it use?
The magnetic pole of the earth.
Magnetic poles of the earth. Eric, how did you say it? Magnetic fields of the earth. So again, science. I can briefly explain it to you. If you got more questions, you're gonna have to go to Mr. McGuire or your own books, I guess. There's a North Pole and a South Pole on the earth. Just like magnets, there's a positive side and a negative side. You ever try to repel magnets? Right, that's related to the magnetic field, whether it's the North or the South Pole. If they connect, it means you got a positive and negative connected. If you flip the magnet and they repel each other, it's kind of fun to play with magnets. That means you got the same side pointing at each other. Well, this idea of magnetic fields was turned into this navigational device that was started as soon as the 1200s. Okay, earliest compasses were tracked all the way back to the 1200s. What time frame are we talking about with Columbus and the group? 1492, Columbus sails the ocean. So about 200 years before Columbus, people are using this compass thing. Now, originally, the early idea would be that they would hang this magnetized needle on a string. So imagine there's a string, and the way that the needle would point, that would indicate what north is, and they could adjust off of that. So originally it starts with the string. It moves to the idea of setting this needle in a tub of water, be it a box or a bowl or whatever. And since the water is kind of free floating the needle, or allows the needle to free float, same idea, the needle points to the north. What if the wind affects the string? That's a great idea, Jayla. I bet a lot of people had some misnavigation based off of that simple error right there. Moves to the more modern compass that you guys might carry in your pocket today, kind of a box covered with some glass. Even if you put it in your pocket and walk around, as soon as you pull it out, it kind of resituates itself and the needle points north. So the needle always points north. If you want to go west, that would mean you keep the needle pointing north and then you follow the line that says you're going west. Right? So the needle points north. The needle doesn't tell you where to go. The needle always points north. You adjust your own self off of the needle pointing north. Boy Scouts, Girl Scouts, American Heritage, church group, whatever you got going on, maybe you know that. If you didn't know that, well, guess what? That's how you use a compass. You got more questions on a compass? Be happy to explain the specifics. The big take you need to know is this is a piece of technology that enabled navigation. Before, they would have to be like, well, moon's over that way, and that's the way I want to go. Sun rises in the east, and we want to go west. All right, that's how we got to do it. The compass and the astrolabe enable more accurate and specific navigation. So big, important pieces of simple technology that enable the age of discovery, the age of exploration. And sailors like Columbus and everybody you guys taught me about used the compass, and sailors use the astrolabe, everything we've talked about so far. All right, so that was a setup. That was two pieces of technology that kind of enable this whole age of discovery. Let's talk about the Columbian Exchange. This is on your notes. Columbian Exchange. Who do you think that's named after? Christopher Columbus. There we go. So, we pumped on him all last week. We said, no, he didn't discover America. He didn't even set foot in America. And, it's not like the continents are even named after him. Why in the world do we give him credit for discovering America? We debunked that myth, right? Well, his legacy still lives on in the name of the Columbian Exchange and the idea that things from the old world, when I say old world, I'm referring to Europe, came to the new world, this is the Americas, and back and forth. An exchange between the old and the new world in the 15 and 1600s. We're going to see, I'm about to show you what type of products started in Europe and came to the Americas, and what products started in the Americas and found their way to Europe. Now today, and they are the products that you have in front of you. That some of you are already coloring, and that's fine. They are the products you have in front of you. I think you're going to be amazed at what is not native to America. I think you're going to say, thank you, Europe, for sending me a couple of key products. So let's find out what some of those are. Now, first, I want to clarify what is old and what is new, right? Europe is where life began, and before this age of discovery, we weren't even sure that this thing was out there, right? So the old world is Europe. The new world is the Americas. It's new, it's shiny, it's sexy. People want to go there. There's adventure there. There's economic opportunity there. New is always better. People love new, right? Old world, Europe. New world, the Americas. And if you look on your map, it's split exactly like that. You got the arrows pointing both directions. So I want you to label old and new worlds. And then at the time of your choosing, if you look at the instructions, it says also draw the line of demarcation. If I need to redraw that or re-show you that, I can do that. But label old and new worlds, draw the line of demarcation, and then the arrows and the boxes where you write the products exchanged. I'm about to get to that, okay? The big idea, the big categories are plants, animals, and diseases. Between the two, plants, animals, and diseases. Which of these three big categories do you think was most significant? Can I get a vote for plants? Like what kind of plants do you have in front of you? Pumpkins.
Bananas.
Okay, so the question is, between of these three categories, plants, animals, and diseases, which was the most significant product exchanged in the Columbian exchange?
Animals.
Can I get a vote for plants? I see tomatoes, pumpkins, avocado, grapes. Those are pretty significant plants. Can I get a vote for animals? What kind of animals do I have in the crowd right now?
Oh, I got
Pigs.
Horses, pigs, cattle. All right, pretty significant exchange there. Can I get a vote for diseases? Now I got a couple of Gracie. I think you got the skull and crossbones. It implies diseases. Historically speaking, okay, and especially inside of the academic world, the most significant, the most important was the exchange of disease. Plants and animals are important. We're about to see how they changed your life, and you're going to be really grateful to Europe for one particular thing that King Julius holding. But the most significant is diseases, because it had the most significant impact on life, and actually the opposite of life, death, diseases. So if you ever find yourself with a test question, or you ever want to talk intelligently about the Columbian exchange, the most important exchange item was disease. Here's a map. I'm going to show you a couple different maps and a couple different ways to think about the products exchanged. But I got my arrows going. I got the line splitting old world and new world. So here we are on the side of the old world. From the old world, would you believe that there were not cows and horses in America before the Columbian exchange? Cattle, horses, livestock like pigs come from the old world. So think about the wild, wild west and herds of wild bucking broncos, or domesticated horses that you show in shows today, or horses that are family pets. None of those would have existed in America. Pigs, cattle for that matter as well. None of those would have existed in America without the Columbian exchange. They are not native to America. So cowboys and Indians riding horses, horses and cattle pulling wagons, bacon for that matter, none of that would have existed in America without the Columbian exchange. That one blew my mind. When I was your age and I was studying, obviously we think horses are like quintessentially American. Came from the old world.
So they lied to me.
Who's that?
The Spirit movie.
How did it lie to you?
That the Indians rode horses.
No. Let me rephrase. Cowboys and Indians absolutely ride horses, but they came here. Those horses came here from Europe. Would not have been possible natively without this Columbian exchange. So, movie didn't lie to you. I'm not shaking up your whole world. just saying the horses and cattle wouldn't have been here without the exchange. TJ.
As you're saying, horses and stuff weren't here, and I've seen pictures of like and Native American drawings and stuff, drawing Spanish whenever they came to the New World, of their horses and like the cross flag, and how it amazed them. Like, what was this?
That's right. Yeah. What is this creature? I don't even know. And you try to compare something to the best thing you do know, or maybe it's like a monster. Take it to the, just make another comparison. Remember, a lot of explorers reported seeing sea monsters. Well, if you've never seen an octopus before, maybe it looks like a sea monster. If you've never seen a giant squid before, maybe it feels a whole lot like a sea monster. So when we don't understand something, we usually have fear about it, and we describe it in extreme terms. So we describe it in a way that might sound silly today, but at the time, it's the first time to ever see this type of an item. Good job, TJ. Good thought. A couple other things that come from the old world: lettuce, wheat, sugar. Thanks a lot, old world. How about the new world? What can they thank us for? Corn. Yeah, that's a big one. And I always make the Disney connection. Pocahontas is trying to give John Smith her corn. Cocoa, meaning I eat chocolate, right? The cocoa bean. Pineapples, potatoes, pumpkin. You're welcome, Europe. You're welcome. This is a pretty good graphic. It shows you a couple of the big products. I got a few more that expand it even a little bit more. Are you ready to say thank you to Europe for the coffee bean?
Yes.
I would like to say thank you, Europe, for sending over the coffee bean. How about this, native Georgians? The peach.
Oh, yes.
The old Georgia peaches. I got it on my driver's license right now. We call ourselves the peach state. Peach comes from Europe. Did you know? What else? The banana, the honeybee, onions. We went through the whole list of livestock. Disease, which we say is the most important exchange. Disease is pretty much a one-way street from Europe to North America. We're really not, North America, the New World, is not exporting disease. Disease pretty exclusively comes from the old to the new. And this is where we see Native Americans, Indians, if you will, dying from diseases like smallpox and malaria and the flu, for that matter. That's because disease has been locked in Europe, and there's plenty of negativity that has happened through disease, like i.e. the Black Plague. But until these two cultures connected, there weren't a lot of these diseases in the Americas. So maybe we could go back and watch that yellow dot video, and especially that it shows the time of the Black Plague where the world population decreases. I'd be curious to be watching the Americas. There's actually very few yellow dots in the Americas at that time on that video, if you recall. So disease, coming from the old to the new. Well, what else did we send towards them? How does this graphic elaborate? We've already talked pumpkins. Tobacco, that's a big one. And especially you future American historians, you're going to see tobacco as a really important crop in the American colonies. A big reason that the British really wanted to control the American colonies was the ability for raw tobacco to come from the American colonies. Avocados, squash, pineapple, I'll get to it. Peanuts, Jimmy Carter, that comes from Georgia. Peanuts come from the Americas. Corn, vanilla bean, tomato, etc. So another good graphic. Again, none of these graphics are entirely comprehensive. They're just kind of talking about the big products. Delaney, what question did you just ask me?
What's quinine?
She says, what is quinine? And that's the best pronunciation I can come up with. Quinine. This is one of the irony of ironies of all time that I think. And I'm going to point it out to you guys, and maybe you'll have that aha moment as well. Disease comes from the old world, right? And I like this. It lists all of them, right? You don't just sum it up with disease. This graphic right here lists all of them. Quinine is the cure for malaria. But the irony of ironies is America holds the cure to malaria. Europe has the malaria. We don't need quinine until malaria comes over in the first place. So we have this flower with its medicinal properties that can cure malaria, but we don't need it because we don't have malaria until malaria comes over in the first place. It's one of those ironies of ironies. But quinine becomes a really important traded item because now it can cure malaria around the world once it is discovered. So good question. One of those words that students don't tend to recognize. until it's explained to them. So, any questions on the Columbian exchange so far? Do you have things? This is where your notes should be filled out pretty well. These two boxes right here, I'll go ahead and leave this graphic up. I can flip back and forth if I need to. You should have these products written down in these boxes pretty well. What we're going to do right now, I'm going to flip the slide, but then I'll flip back. If you haven't been coloring, I want you to color your item. And what I'm going to do, I wasn't able to set this up before class, I'm going to go outside and hang 2 strings. And then when you're done, I want you to hang your product on the right string. So I will make sure they're clearly labeled. This side from America, new to old, and then old to new. Just give me a second to hang up these 2 strings. And we're going to hang your product on the right place. And I'm going to do I'll probably have to tape up a couple of graphics to make sure it looks clear. But I'll do that after our class period. And we'll kind of have a nice little product for ourselves, a nice little visual for ourselves. What's up? That's a honeybee. That's a honeybee.
Oh, it's a bee.
What'd you think it was?
A disease.
A disease. Oh, no, it's a honeybee. So y'all take a few minutes here while I get these strings. And if you haven't been coloring, you are welcome to start coloring. I'm going to click back to this graphic for you to finish your notes. And we're going to take 5 minutes to get this done, okay? Doing good on time. We're doing good on time. This is just part 1. Part 1 of our big conversation.
Wow.
What color is that?
Oh, make it the same. No.
Lettuce with green.
Purple. Mom, stop. Lettuce does that name purple.
Yeah, that's the top.
Lettuce is
Talking about
purple.
green lettuce.
No, we're not. We're talking about lettuce. Lettuce is purple. No, and purple.
I'm just drawing.
Yeah, lettuce.
I like it. That's what she said.
No, that's what
Green lipstick.
Look at you, Christian.
Who's
Maybe you got a stick. We passed
Hey, if you're someone that wants to color another item, okay, there's a few that I wasn't able to hand out. So if you want to color another item related to the Columbian exchange, you may. And I'm getting these strings hung up, and we're going to go ahead and we'll be able to click these things up in just a second.
I got one.
The most important thing is that your coloring helps you remember which items would have belonged in which direction in the exchange.
You realize it's a male horse, right?
A tall.
It's like
What?
orange.
Okay, color it. That's what in.
Yeah, that's
Actually, she was really tall, right? So they call her a stallion. They call all girls. Stallions are tall pictures of husband stallion. So that's why I got
straight to it,
Hey, I need that.
You know what
But
that
that's
treasure
what they
means?
call them in Texas.
Texas.
Yeah.
I'm gonna do that.
Veil has colored inside. No. Did you know that Hannah Montana? That's not her real name. So, like, the first name that she come up with was Alexis Texas. But they found out it was a Portuguese thing. I take that to
That's a
That is her.
That was Hannah Montana.
I got 3 or 4 more minutes on your coloring. I'm gonna have this hung up and you can bring it on out.
I have a color, I can tell you This is stressing me.
You ain't never seen my daddy. I got to see my daddy up front.
You never said that? I first time like 2 weeks ago. Like that's not awesome. Wait, are you good about us?
I'm in Illinois. So you see, the thing about some.
You ain't never seen my daddy.
Oh, yeah.
Boy, you ain't never seen no black man, huh? My
Hey, yo.
That was a joke.
dad ain't the Barely see it anymore.
That's our female.
No one ever said you were.
If you don't like this type of music,
Horses.
Like that.
I don't like rainbow colors, but you don't like it, right? You gave it. I want my friend. Yeah, right.
That's mine. What?
Hey, yo.
How old are you?
Love bug and we it's not even anywhere the best place. Yeah, they can catch one.
I thought it was good. All right, we will say that the top, they're not different colors. This time, last semester I had a different. The top will be the new world to the old world, and the bottom you can clip on old world to the new world. And I will throw up some labels after this class period to make it a little bit more clear. What you can do is come pick one little clippy here. Okay, don't be too crazy hard with it because it's fragile, and you just clip your picture to the top of the string. It's right outside the classroom. Okay, so if you are ready. Know which one it goes on. Top is new to old, bottom is old to new. Come on out, I'll give you a clip. You do that. And if you're not done, when I got wrap up, you're perfectionist.
Yeah.
If you're ready, tell it. Wait, so is it a lie or is it not a lie?
I got clips out here where you guys are grabbing one for yourself. That's great. I see it now. There you go.
Bro, I need that.
I see some pictures that are pretty good and done. A bunch of perfectionists.
Thing is, I have to do mine 5 times. Donations on the line.
It's not listed.
I do not have those. Whenever I get money, I'll do. Yes.
Come on now, about 2 more minutes to finish. And if you're not finished and you want to hang it up later today, I'll allow that.
How many minutes?
2. This is only half of our conversation.
What color is the outside of the box?
This is only half of our conversation. I got more to get to.
Exactly. Oh
And guess what? You're about to get a whole nother page here. So I am handing out page 2 already. As you tidy up page 1, you can start to think about page 2.
This is where you see an avocado at?
How did you want to swim?
Look at his leg, Mr. Swanson.
Elijah, go where you're going.
Creamer and tomato. I got my grandma
Who doesn't have part 2 yet? Who doesn't have part 2? Who doesn't have a part 2?
I mean, Grace, not Grace.
All right, real talk. We're going to pause for the bathroom, go to the bathroom. When we come back, we're moving on to the next section. If you have not hung up your Columbian exchange, that's fine. I would ask for you to bring it to me later today so that we can build our board. Go to the bathroom, go to the bathroom, go to the bathroom.
I'm colorblind, I can't tell the difference. Never trust Is that a barrel? Are you saying they grew barrels in America? Like barrels grew up the ground? Somebody else. Here, what up?
Gerardo, I didn't have a chance to get this Friday, man.
Oh yeah.
Who live back here?
Oh, what? Well, me and Gerardo are like brothers, except he's next to me. I'm gonna go ahead and
Go, bathroom.
I can't. Oh, we're going to vote. Yeah.
No, I'm confused. What's the point of the triangle?
Hey, go!
Texas. Textiles. Laces.
No, I'm not kidding.
Like all the other.
So this is the new portal. It lives with you. Let's get started. Oh, and the camera I think I do. I like it. Facebook portal. Share something real.
All right.
I gotta replay it now. I don't know what just turned on.
Weird. This one's got the words on it, so you can see God in gold and glory and the forgetting company. Hey, go ahead and start on the next page I gave you while I get
That's not
So I don't know about you, but I have rewalked through the Disney catalog with different eyes since I've been a history teacher. And I have to say that there's some incredibly historically relevant pieces of the Disney world. Now, I didn't say historically accurate. I said historically relevant. So there's definitely some areas where I wouldn't say that. I wouldn't say Disney nailed the accuracy. But if it inspires you to read a little bit more about what would be accurate, then it's good. I can see, we didn't really touch China, but Mulan in China, there's a lot of things there. Pocahontas, John Smith. It's actually Pocahontas 2 that has John Rolfe, who bred the smoother blend of tobacco. So there's some historical accuracy there. John Rolfe.
No, look, they did not treat Pocahontas that nice.
The mythology of Pocahontas laying on John Smith and saving his life, there's definitely some iffiness to that.
She ended up pregnant.
Historicalness. But hey, don't get me too far off track. I'm just saying, if Pocahontas was on the young side, just like Sacagawea, it's culturally different. And that is a big part. Don't miss this. I'm going to sidebar here. Don't miss this. The way you live is not the way everybody has lived across all time and space of history. What you think is normal isn't 100% exclusively the right way. to live according to other people, other times, other cultures. So don't miss that as you learn about world history. I hope what you'll decide more than anything else is, man, the way I do life isn't the only way to do life. So yeah, Pocahontas and her age and everything you guys just brought up, no, that's not super normal to us, but that doesn't make it deviant behavior to her culture. I digress. So as you are now coloring on either a gun, a barrel, or even I got a barrel labeled rum, okay, rum and alcohol, cotton, or textiles, these are the products I have you coloring on now. And if you're wondering where any of those products fits into the conversation, I got you.
Mr. Swan.
Oh, yeah, what's up?
Real quick.
Friends, Romans, countrymen. Okay, we're back on track. Except what was I saying? Moving on. First step was Columbian exchange. Now we're going to talk about a major idea called triangular trade. And if you flip your notes over, you'll see triangular trade. And if you look up, maybe you notice you're sitting under a giant triangle in our classroom. We are going to build triangular trade in our classroom. And I hope, my biggest hope is that by putting hands on, by doing this kind of elaborate activity, you're going to be able to remember it better, right? One thing for a teacher to just talk about it, maybe even show a sweet video, but we are living it to the best of our ability in this classroom, and I hope it's going to help you remember it, okay? So what is triangular trade? Triangular trade is this is the nice little academic sentence definition. A multi-step system of trading in which a country pays for its imports from one country by its exports to another. That means I will take what I have in my country, I sail to another part of the world, and then I swap it for what they have. They want what I have, I want what they have, and so it's kind of a fair deal all around. But it's not just a two-way relationship. Tri means what? Three, yeah. So there's this 3 steps in this process, and it's almost like, if this works for you sports guys, sports gals, if this analogy works, it's almost like a 3-way trade, right? If the Red Sox and the Yankees trade a player 1 for 1, that's a 2-way trade. But every now and then, the Red Sox, Yankees, and the Braves will agree to kind of a 3-way swap, and the ESPN.com message gets really confusing and complicated. It's a 3-way swap here. 3-way swap. Now, I'm going to talk you through it, okay? So if you're not tracking just yet, that's fine. I'm going to talk you through it. You see the triangular graphic on the screen? You see something pretty similar on your notes? We're going to take it one step at a time, and then I'm going to package it all together and say this is triangular trade, and I hope we'll have an understanding by that point. Step 1, leg 1, was England to Africa. So I got a little boat on my stick here. This is Europe. You can see Italy, right? This is England, Spain, France, and then this is the part of Europe we don't really usually consider, but this is Europe. Look right there, you got Africa. I got a ship on my stick. This represents the voyage of one single ship, but we replicate it across all the ships who take this journey, okay? So I'm a ship captain, I'm in England, and I say, let's get ready to start the triangular trade journey. I'm going to load myself up with manufactured goods. What is a manufactured good? Made by man, goes through a factory process. England at this time is known for having steam power and industrial factories. So what you guys have in your hands right now, that would include guns, because iron has to be made by man, has to be worked into a shape. Cloth, so the textiles, the actual clothing, the actual made cloth, not cotton, hang on to that thought, but the actual clothing or string cloth. And then rum, so the barrels that represent rum, that is a manufactured good. That's what this ship loads up with on England. Help me out, guys. I got to do some walking here. I want to knock something over. So I'm going on my leg one journey with my manufactured goods all the way to Africa. Stormy seas, guys get sick. Maybe there's a mutiny. Who knows? It's dangerous. But I make my way to Africa. I hope you can recognize the continent of Africa on the wall right here. Now that I'm in Africa, I'm going to offload my manufactured goods, my guns, my clothes, my rum, and I'm selling them at market. And as my ship empties up, what am I going to load it back up with? Slaves. This is true, okay? We're going to have an extra little side conversation about the slave trade. We're going to try to, instead of just saying that slaves are a product, I'm going to humanize the whole process for you. But right now, we'll just say leg 2 involves slaves. So on the Western African coast, and you can see the yellow arrows point to the Western African coast, this ship may have taken multiple stops. It may have taken multiple stops at ports from the north to the south, all along that coastline, to actually fill up with a maximum number of African slaves. Now, who is bringing these slaves to market to get onto my ship? Europeans, how?
Americans.
Other Africans. That's a part of the slave trade we sometimes neglect to think about. Africans enslaved Africans in this process. Now, it's a crime to humanity, the fact that slavery existed. Anyone involved is involved in what I would call sin, but we could at least say a crime against humanity, right? But that includes black Africans in Africa starting the process of slave trading. So white slave owners, plantation owners in Georgia, the Confederate States of America who fought to preserve slavery, absolutely negative, harmful, sinful, bad part of society. But it does start in Africa. It starts with African tribes at war with each other and the losers of any given battle being enslaved. It is Africans who want to break into homes and snatch young children and take them to market. Now, a lot of times this is driven by the fact that this European ship is arriving at port willing to pay money for slaves. So big idea there, but I want you to notice, you have to remember that the slave trade starts with Africans enslaving Africans. Ship gets full of slaves, black Africans. We're in Africa. Where are we going next?
America.
Correct.
The Korean.
All right, let me make sure I said it. So leg 2, this was all leg 1. Leg 2 is from Africa to the New World. And maybe you see North America on the wall back there. Africa to the New World. This is the second leg. I'm setting out back over the open ocean. I'm crossing kind of the Caribbean Sea area, maybe skirting the edge of South America, but heading to the Caribbean islands in America. I'm carrying slaves. This journey, this portion of the journey is called Middle Passage. Why is it called middle? Because it's the second of 3 legs. It is the middle portion of triangular trade. It is the only leg that really gets an iconic name because of how brutal it was to the Africans on the slave ships. Go ahead. What you got?
I'm saying it was everything but humane. There was hundreds of slaves in the bottom of the ship. It was high.
That's right. Eric, we're gonna talk Middle Passage specifically here in a second. And in fact, this string right here I'm gonna hang up some photos of the slave trade. That's gonna show you just how terrible and criminal the whole process was. All that said, I'm just teaching the big ideas here, right? All that said, arriving in, could have been any port city, a variety of port cities. South America, Central America, Haiti, the Bahamas, or the American South, okay? States like Florida and Georgia and Alabama and South Carolina and North Carolina. That's where the ship would then offload its cargo. What is its cargo? Humans. Don't mistake that. They are humans, but slaves. And where slaves would be sold at auction. Variety of ways that happened. Families being split up, people being analyzed for their health, people being evaluated for how capable they might be on the farm. Again, we often think about the American South as being slaveholding states, Confederate states, right? Plantation owners. But slaves were also sold in the Caribbean islands, Brazil, Peru, etc. So while the scar certainly belongs on America's head, right? We should not look at our history and forget the idea that we own slaves at this portion in time. There's also a variety of other countries involved in the African slave trade as well. All right, we will return to Middle Passage, but right now let's move back on to leg 3. So in America, my ship is empty once again. Sold all my Africans, my slaves, my ship is empty again. What is America good for? What can I fill my ship up with again? Raw materials. What is a raw material? A natural good straight from the earth, okay, that distinguishes it from a manufactured good that's been worked through the factory or worked on by human hands. The raw goods we're specifically talking about are sugar, cotton, and tobacco. Tobacco, this is where world history starts to support U.S. history. Tobacco becomes a major cash crop in U.S. history, really important to the early colonies. Sugar cane, also important. Now, sugar came from the old world, but we actually discover that the climate of the new world is better for growing it. So the seeds and the plant itself comes from Europe, but actually thrives a little bit more in America. That's significant. And then obviously cotton. Cotton itself is a driver of the slave trade, right? You need labor on your cotton plantation. So that's how everything is interconnected. So I'm loaded back up with my sugar, cotton, tobacco, other raw materials. And leg 3 takes me back home, right? Theoretically, it's home because I started in England. And in England, I offload my raw goods where they are turned into what? Manufactured goods. And then I start all over again. So there you have it on the screen. This is a big, the big summary. You've seen this little graphic on all the slides so far. But if you have not completed your triangular trade notes at this point, take a second here to make sure you have each leg written down. I want you to highlight the middle passage. I want you to specifically write down middle passage. You can even put a color on it. A lot of you like to be real, you got colored pencils right in front of you. So I'm gonna give you a second to make sure you accomplish all of that. Label the consonants, indicate the products moved, highlight the middle passage. That's what you're supposed to do on this set of notes. So in a second here, we are going to hang up your color page where it belongs, right? Europe to Africa, that's where your manufactured goods are going to get hung up. America back to Europe, raw materials. And then I am going to hang up some pictures related to the slave trade and Middle Passage. Real quick before we do that, I want to use one more map here to point out the slave trade. I really like this map. Maybe you haven't figured it out yet. I'm pretty nerdy about good graphics. Go ahead, Jeff. I'm pretty nerdy about a map that really elaborates and shows me several things visually. And that's why I like to bring these to you as well, in the hopes that for those of you that are visual, kind of connects with you as well. We see the west coast of Africa. We can see multiple port cities. The gray shaded area, that's, we're not talking about the middle of Africa, the heart of Africa. The majority of these slaves come from this shaded area. So if you lived along the coastline, you're kind of at risk of being kidnapped, captured. If you were in a war type conflict, maybe you'd be captured as a slave and taken to port. So it's this gray portion right here. There's a couple of dominant port cities, and that is indicated by the thicker red lines. On this graphic, the thicker the red line, the more slaves that traveled that route. So now here's what we can see from this. We can see that between 1650 and 1860, it coincides with the beginning of the American Civil War, about 15 million enslaved people traveled Middle Passage, traveled on the slave highway. 15 million. Now, in the world today, we have 9 billion. Maybe that's not that many people, but at that time in history, when the world's population was smaller, pretty significant portion of the world that found themselves enslaved and traveling on Middle Passage or the slave highway. Now, where did they go? Let's look right here to Brazil. 5 million. 33% of slaves go to Brazil. Let's compare that to the American South. About 500,000. 500,000 slaves find themselves transported to the American South. Now, what's slightly different about what might skew those numbers is that slaves in America often had babies and created more slaves. Slaves in these other nations, that wasn't necessarily the case. Actually, there's a lot of the plantation owners or the slave masters actually discouraged that. In fact, they said you can't have babies, i.e., and make more slaves. So that is something that's different about America, is that in America, more slaves were being born, more people were being born into slavery, whereas Brazil kept demanding more slaves be brought over because they weren't procreating. Does that make sense? 5 million in Brazil compared to 500,000 in the American South. 4.5 million into these West Indies, right? We're talking the Central America and the Bahamas, etc. A couple of them went straight, a portion of them would have gone straight back to Europe. So let's not absolve Europe of having slavery as well. And then some would even take the long hook around the west side of South America into Peru and Argentina. So a lot going on there. Tried to explain it a little bit. I think the big take is that America and the American South was not the largest customer of Middle Passage. We can't absolve other people, other nationalities from the slave trade either. One more graphic that just shows a pretty similar thing. It actually shows the numbers a little bit more thoroughly. Obviously, the thicker the line, the more people traveled it. I really like how the lines get really tiny right here to show that they went to all these various islands. Even if there's a small amount of enslaved Africans, they still went to these small islands. And, slave trade does go all the way into the northern part of the colonies as well, because we know that Northerners held slaves until a certain part of American history as well. So a lot going on there. The biggest idea is that as world historians, we don't exclusively focus on America. We got to recognize that the Middle Passage and the slave trade involves all of the Americas and the Caribbean as well. So not just the American South. Now, what we can do now is hang up your item where it goes. Go ahead and get another little clip. If you need to, that's fine. I'm going to be hanging on Middle Passage here. You guys can be hanging. Up where your stuff belongs. Still coloring, that's fine for a second. If you need to hang up on the Columbian Exchange, you can step outside and do that. But share the space here, make sure everybody has a chance. That's a manufactured good, it's rum. If you have a barrel, it is rum. That is a manufactured good. Try to use the small one first. So manufactured good is Europe. Everybody's participating. Let's try to get them kind of evenly spaced out, depending on how many people are doing it. Yeah, where you're seeing everyone else put shoes.
My bad, stacioninha. Stacioninha.
Be careful as you stand. Help me out.
Don't tell me I gotta stand on chest. Hey, this one outside. That one you outside.
That is rum, so what is it? Beer.
And I'm like, I might
But in terms of triangular trade, what is it? Manufactured or raw? If you're still working on one of the Columbian exchanges, you can go ahead and maybe get that hung up outside.
Dude, my cotton
And
is
I'm
there.
Here's and I'm trying to get out the free will.
Cotton is there.
And my leg,
Okay, the only thing is that,
You color
But none of them are ready to be picked, so it don't matter.
All right, go ahead and find your seat. I'm almost done here with middle passage. If you want to be looking at the middle passage pictures, and if you want to come a little closer, you may do that.
What's all the feet?
It's all the feet, though, anyway.
Are they dead?
So they got transported for
I done found a riot in the display.
What did they eat?
still,
What did they eat?
the one same thing as big.
All right, so obviously I have just hung pictures up that may obstruct your view. I'm gonna show a few more things on the screen here. So if you need to get where you can see the screen, go ahead and do that. So I have a disclaimer, like you get your picture back. Got an important conversation ahead. And in this important conversation, I'm gonna say things that are real and accurate. Certainly not gonna try to lead towards any offense at all. Let's have a grown and mature adult conversation about the horrors of slavery. If I use language like Black or African American, I'm just speaking about realistic. I'm not trying to offend at all. So can we agree to that? And then also there's a couple of kind of gruesome pictures. If you're not one that wants to see those pictures, you're welcome to just put your head down or step out. You're welcome to do that, okay? Important conversation ahead. I believe that we're grown enough to have this conversation. So here are some pictures, and I'm going to kind of elaborate as we go about how terrible the middle passage was. Here's one right here. So what do we see going on? Now this is a sketch. It's not a photograph. It's because it's kind of, this period predates cameras. We're not quite there yet. But what do we see in this sketch? What are the various relationships of the people in this sketch here? Men, women, and children. Okay. Who appears to be in charge versus who appears to be, enslaved? So they're both Africans. That's an important take there. What might lead Africans to enslave fellow Africans?
Selfishness.
Money, selfishness.
Not from the same tribe.
Not from the same tribe, so maybe there's a war of some sort going on. One side wins, another side loses. And hey, as was pretty common throughout history, the losing side of a war is very often captured and enslaved. So this is not radically different from what a lot of history up to this point would have done. Now, sometimes we get a little bit shock value when there's women and children involved as well. So there has to be a lack of humanity for a group that will enslave toddlers, kind of like we see in the picture there. But yes, we definitely see a an African toting a gun in dominance of these other Africans, an African carrying the whip in dominance of these other Africans. So this goes to show that the slave trade started with Africans enslaving other Africans. What do we see here? So punishment of something. Whipped is what's happening. Maybe it's punishment. Maybe it's just a dominance thing. I'm in charge and you're not. Who's doing the whipping? An African. Now, what do you notice around his ankle, though? But, so he's shackled in some form as well. I don't know enough about this picture to quite have all the answers, but who do you see standing off background a little bit far right? Soldier. What type of soldier? I think Jayla said it. That's a white man. That's a European. That's a European uniform, and his skin is a little lighter complected. So to me, this shows that the Europeans were involved in kind of forcing the African slave trade and maybe encouraging the African on African dominance, that kind of a thing. So I've always been perplexed at he is whipping a fellow African, but he himself is not entirely free. What?
So it doesn't get killed.
Every now and then across time and history, we see prisoners rise up and even dominate fellow prisoners. We could, without getting in too many details, we see how sometimes in the Nazi concentration camps, the Jewish concentration camps, there were good prisoners who were put in charge over those that they were, that they were going to tattletale on or narc on, if you will. So I don't fully know all the details on this photo. It's just something we can try to think about and talk about. This is an African. This is one of the slave ships. Like I just walked my ship across all three legs. This ship would have started in England filled with what? Manufactured goods. This leg right here, which you guys just colored and hung up. But in Africa, along the West African coast, it's going to offload its manufactured goods and fill up with African slaves. And they, from a commerce perspective, how many African slaves do they want to carry?
As many as they could.
That's the statement, as many as they could. At the expense of comfort and humanity and making sure that they were healthy and alive. Now, real fine line, they wanted their products to arrive in America alive and sellable, but there's an understood, kind of acceptable loss. And if we lose 20% of them, if they die, throw them overboard, is what it is, that kind of thing. Terrible attitude, because these people were viewed as products. So this graphic, really, this is how to build a slave ship. It says 130 of them can be stored under the shelves as shown, even using the walkway to fit a few more in there. Pretty sure this graphic says they only have a height of 2 feet 7 inches between them and the beams. 2 feet 7 inches laying down before my face. 2 feet 7 inches for the entire journey across the Atlantic Ocean. This is a picture of a sail happening in. This is probably the American South. I think that the historicalness of this picture says it's in Virginia. I should have that written down somewhere. But what do we see about to happen in this picture?
Mothers being separated from the child.
Yeah, families being separated. What is the demeanor of the white people in this picture? Pretty uncaring. Right, they're going to separate mother from child, even a nursing child from mother, and they're really just evaluating the money side of it. You know, how much money can I get out of this?
Did they get fed?
So, do they get fed? Yes, because they had to arrive alive, right? They had to arrive healthy. And actually, Jayla, this fits my next picture pretty well. Here is an advertisement, just like you might advertise, sale on ground beef or a sale on a vehicle. I don't know, right? Whatever you're going to sell. This is an advertisement for sale. Parcel of prime slaves. So, Jayla, your question was, do they feed them? They always wanted their product to arrive healthy enough. So, did they super take care of them? No, it wasn't a gourmet meal, but they did want them to arrive alive. And actually, a disease-free, strong, well-fed slave, that was worth more than, emaciated, unable to work, broken down slave. So there's a real fine line of they wanted them healthy enough to be sold, but yeah, of course, they're still cramming as many of them in there as possible. Here's another one, to be sold, Negroes just arrived. Utmost care has been taken to keep them free from smallpox. So whether that's true or not, they are trying to offer, they're trying to sell their wares healthy and disease-free. This is the product of the American slave trade, well, the African slave trade, and this slave in particular does come from the American South. To me, this picture is the lasting physical scar imagery of what was slavery. What was the slave trade? What was Middle Passage? This man, and he is in this picture, he is free. He is freed after the Emancipation Proclamation, after the American Civil War. So a little bit jump into U.S. history as well. But in his freedom, he still carries the scars of the African slave trade. And I would offer to you that that's a physical representation of the scars we still kind of carry as a society for having partaken in the African slave trade. It's not your fault that America was involved in the African slave trade, but it does affect our world still today. So there's the big summary. Triangular trade, we already did it. What I have here is Middle Passage hung up, and there's even some photos we didn't quite get to. This is a video clip I don't quite have the time to show, but I will post it for you. There's I could tell one of any of 1,000 stories from Middle Passage, African slave trade. This is a story of a ship of slaves that stood up and revolted, right? They actually overtook their white shipmasters, and they revolted on their ship. Now, they unfortunately didn't find their final freedom because they were arrested when they came into port. They had to go to port somewhere. When they came to port, they were arrested. But it just shows how some slaves didn't just take it. There's always the resistance that can happen. It reminds me a whole lot of Flight 93 on September 11th. People standing up to bad guys. So Amistad is a famous story. It's a movie. Okay, that's a clip from a movie, and maybe that's something we'll have a chance to watch on a different day. This is something I actually just learned of this kind of harrowing memorial. This is called For Those That Chose the Sea, and it's actually an underwater memorial representing those who, some slaves chose to jump overboard on the Middle Passage, knowing that they were headed towards slavery, knowing that they were headed towards a life that maybe they just thought wasn't worth living. Many slaves chose the sea. Many mothers threw their babies overboard to save them from a life of slavery. And this memorial, like I said, I didn't know about it till this, kind of till teaching this class. Really beautiful and harrowing, and it is to recognize those that chose the sea instead, almost as, and it's recognizing that there's a bravery in that. They jumped over and they died, and you would call that suicide, but they were going to refuse to be a part of the African slave trade and the system. So that's pretty cool little memorial there that I wanted to show you. And then a final thing, which unfortunately we just absolutely don't have time to explore. There's a variety of things that maybe we'll get to our last week of school after we take our post-test, and it's kind of a slide into Christmas. This is a really cool website called slavevoyages.com, and it lets you dive into maps, a slave ship in 3D, timelines of, how many people traveled on Middle Passage at various times. So I will post this link. It is very cool. I was hoping we'd have some time to explore it in class, but here we are. We just gotta move on with our day. Pretty cool website, slavevoyages.com. So I'm gonna leave this up actually all day. My U.S. history class is probably gonna be like, I can't see, but I'm gonna leave it up so that you can see it. I'll leave it up at least through tomorrow so that we can see our triangular trade. And if you want to look at some Middle Passage pictures, you can do that as well. The notes you took today will be due Friday, so hang on to them. Tomorrow, we're going to jump into a group project that involves what? Props and costumes. Props and costumes. So if that grabs your attention or whets your appetite, come to school for these next couple days because we're going to have a fun group project going on. If you got a Columbian exchange thing to hang up, you can do it anytime today. I see a peach. I see some sugar. So you're going to advisor next?
No.
What?
No.
I haven't decided yet. 2 questions. She said, "Are y'all going to choose groups or am I going to choose groups?" I haven't decided yet.